Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. You dialed that correctly to USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us this morning, live in Australia. Alex is engineering the broadcast. I'm Vincent Finelli. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Very, very well. I hear a little crackling in your telephone connection. Maybe we can resolve that if it continues during the next break. So, Guineith, where do you want to start? You want to start with a little nursery rhyme? Do you want me to start with something that I found out about the Chinese factory outlet? Where would you like to start?
Okay, I think I would like to start with a nursery rhyme.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if they even say nursery rhymes in America anymore, okay, with the way the educational system has gone. But I'm sure that some older members of the class will remember this one. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating his Christmas pie. He stuck in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, "What a good boy am I." Does anybody know that nursery rhyme?
A lot of us who are baby boomers do. And there's some links to some words like stuck in his thumb and pulled out a plum, right? Yep, that's right. Okay, well, I'll explain what the nursery rhyme means. Jack Horner was actually a historical figure, okay? His name was actually John Horner, but back in the day, they often used to call people who were John Jack, of course. And he was a historical figure, and he was a young boy, and he was a servant in what in England they used to call the big house, which meant he was a small servant of a lord of the manor back in England. And what happened was he was given an assignment one Christmas to deliver a pie from this manor house over here to that manor house over there, okay? And it was cold, and it was rather a long journey, and he sat down and he got hungry. And so he thought that nobody would notice, being a child, children never change, if he lifted up the corner of the pie and took a handful of pie filling out and filled his little belly. Now, when he opened the top of the pie, he found that there was actually no filling in it. That instead there were title deed documents. And he had learned how to read a little bit, and so he understood that they were very, very important. And so what he did was he didn't deliver the title deed documents to the place where they were supposed to go. Instead, he took them home. And he showed his parents, and he said, "This is mine. I found it." And his parents, they might have been lower class people, but they were honourable enough to recognise that their son was actually the one who had got these documents, and so they decided that they would let their son, that their son was the one who had them, and so Jack Horner became a very, very wealthy man. He went and he claimed the title to this vast estate, and it was actually granted to him because in those days, whoever had the title deeds of the estate was the owner of that estate. Okay? And that was what happened. Now, I had a dream last night, or, in that stage of sleep where you're just about to wake up in the morning. That's the stage of sleep. If you ever have a dream in that stage of sleep, it's very, very important to notice it because that's the later stage of sleep, and those are usually the dreams that turn out to be prophetic. Now, what happened was I had a dream where I saw there were men, there was a group of men, and they were gathered in a basement, or it seemed like a dungeon, okay, or a cellar. I think you call them basements in the United States, don't you?
Yes, we call them basements. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But this basement was done up like a dungeon, and there was this group of men, and they were old men, and they were playing Monopoly. And they were the Monopoly men. They were the servants of the banker. And it's a really funny thing because in the background there was playing this music. And this all ties together, and it'll become apparent in a moment how it all ties together. They were playing this music was playing in the background, and this music was their theme song. Okay, it's as if the final act of a movie was playing out in my dream. Okay, but the song that was playing in the background, anyone who's been a fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean will know the Pirates song from Pirates of the Caribbean. And something in my mind clicked, and I said to myself in the dream, oh, that's the music that was written by James Horner. And I'm not sure if it was written by James Horner or not, but it was close enough to be relevant to the dream. Now, these Monopoly men were very, very frightened because they knew that the whole play act of their scheme was in its final phases and it may not succeed. Now, how this is all relevant is that they've got a plan, and their plan is that they want to rob you, they want to rob me, and they want to rob all of us of our estates. They want to be the Jack Horners, to rob us of our title deeds to our estates. That is what's going to happen. Now, they, of course, have no right to any of our estates, and the unfortunate thing is that with most people, they will actually succeed in robbing them of their estates because people do not have the knowledge and the courage to stand up to save their own estates. And I've been shown of what it is that we all need to do to stand up to these people so that we don't lose our estates like that lord hundreds and hundreds of years ago lost his entire estate to a little boy called Jack Horner. And if you go to the Horner family today, it is an actual family, and they're hugely, hugely wealthy. They're one of the wealthiest families in England. And I don't know if James Horner, the famous musician was actually a descendant from the famous Jack Horner, but it really wouldn't surprise me if he was. But what we need to do to save our own estates is actually very, very simple. Shall I go into that now, Vincent? Or
sure, that would be great. That would be great.
Should I wait till we get to the other side?
Well, no, start now. You've got a couple minutes.
Okay. Now, there's two groups of people in particular who are after taking your estate off you. Okay? One of them is the municipalities, and the other one is the bankers. Okay? Now, both of them, like I say, is very, very easy to defeat them under the common law. But you must stand under the common law because, they've got no rights under the common law to any estate that you have. The municipality can only claim that you have not paid your property taxes, okay, if that is in fact the case. But what you need to do is you need to point out that they are a corporation and they thus have no right whatsoever to charge taxes. And you need to go out and research their corporate registration details, and you need to bring them up in court, and you need to dig your heels in, and you need to not back down. That's very, very important, all of the above. And if you get a corrupt judge who does not accept any of that, you need to appeal, and you need to keep appealing until you get to the Supreme Court. Because what they're doing is absolutely fraudulent, okay? These municipalities are all corporations, and I detailed last Wednesday, it was last Wednesday, wasn't it, where I said about the UCC 1-308. You need to claim UCC 1-308 over your own real estate and say, I reserve the right to maintain fee simple title, allodial title of my own land, which cannot be extinguished under hundreds and hundreds of years of common law precedent. You cannot extinguish allodial, freehold, fee simple title. Cannot be extinguished.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs. Live in Australia, Guineith Isaacs. Guineith, did you want to continue this discussion, or do you want to go beat up Walmart?
No, I've got a little bit more to say about this. Okay?
Sure.
If you are in Australia and if you are in Britain, okay, if you're in Australia, you can still put UCC 1/308 in there, because the Commonwealth of Australia is a corporation registered with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. And just to reiterate, I gave out these details last time. Their CIK code is 0000805-157. That's their registration code on the Edgar register for the US SEC .gov. I think is their website, isn't it? Yeah, and
I believe that's right.
If you go there, you'll get I think it's the search box says CIK search or Edgar search results. And, you type in 0000805-157 in that box and you come up with the details. But there's also another one, okay, which is an act of Imperial Parliament, okay, of the House of, the British Houses of Parliament, which is law in Australia because we never We never rebelled against the Crown in this country, so we are still under the rule of the Imperial Majesty, and so is Canada. And so this act is applicable in Canada, and it's applicable in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and it's applicable in Australia. And that is, this is where the monopoly men came in. That's called the Statute of Monopolies. And it states in the Statute of Monopolies that the only municipal corporations that are allowable are the ones that were established at the time that the Statute of Monopolies was written into law, okay, and that no other municipal corporations shall be allowed, okay. The words that it actually uses are these corporations and none other. Now that and none other is self-evident that if you have a municipal corporation that is less than about 400 years old, it is unlawful under the Statute of Monopolies. The Statute of Monopolies is on the United Kingdom's Department of Justice site, is still registered as an Act of Parliament, although it was signed into law over 400 years ago. It is still an Act of Parliament. It has never, ever been revoked. And so it is the law in the United Kingdom, and it's also the law in Australia, and it's also the law in Canada. So any municipal corporate status that any municipality claims in Australia or in England or in any of the United Kingdom or in Canada is completely unlawful unless that corporation was established at the time when the Statute of Monopolies was signed into law about 400 years ago. And the list of these corporations that were actually established at that time, such as the City of London, such as, I think, the Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow, I think, is a very, very short list of municipalities that were actually, municipal corporations at that time, and there wouldn't be more than about a dozen of them in all, okay? Any other corporation is completely null and void, municipal corporation, and they've got no right to charge property taxes. On that
we'll be right back, and we'll discuss this a little more when we come back. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, the United States government is really big on acronyms, and you used the word Edgar search, and you're absolutely right. And I thought we could define that. Would you like to define that, or would you like me to do that?
You'd better do that. I don't actually know the definition.
Okay. Edgar. Like J. Edgar Hoover.
Yep.
EDGAR. It stands for Electronic Data Gathering, Analysis, and Retrieval. So EDGAR is Electronic Data Gathering, Analysis, and Retrieval. And that's the kind of stuff the government does. They gather data, okay? And it's the data. It's an online public database from the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC. And EDGAR performs automated collection, validation, indexing, acceptance, and forwarding of submissions by companies and others who are required by law to file forms with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that's EDGAR. Now, you mentioned a numerical sequence, and that was 00008051157. And if you'd like to do it the easy way, class, and see what Guineith Isaacs is talking about, all you have to do, another acronym, AYHTDI, all you have to do is AYHTDI. Type in your favorite search engine just this number, 0000805157. And you will find out that you have found the company filing known as the Commonwealth of Australia, whose business address is 1601 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest, also known as the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C. There it is.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
When I first found that out, my jaw scraped the floor. And I think that when most people find that out, their jaw scrapes the floor. They are a private corporation, and we do not have to consent to contract with them. And, if they try and claim that we must contract with them for X, Y, and Z, or they're going to get us, or we can't do business here, we need to point out that that's actually in breach of the statute of monopolies, and that it's called extortion, and we don't have to do that, and it's a really, really crazy, amazing thing, but it's true. There's no disputing it. It's absolutely prima facie. It's on the face of it. That's how it is. But by the way, I have to put my disclaimer in here, okay? None of what you're hearing in this broadcast is legal advice. None of it. All of it is just education. All of it is just opening your eyes on how the world actually is, okay? You've got probably access to the internet either at home or through some other facility. Go and check this information for yourself. And your actions are your own responsibility. And I do not give legal advice, but I do inform and educate people about what the law says and their rights under the law, primarily British and Australian common law. Now, it gets even more amazing than that, because we haven't even started on the banks yet. By the way, in closing, if you are fighting the property tax thing, either in the United States or in Australia or in Canada or in Britain, you need to, unless you're unfortunate enough to be in one of these municipalities that was established over 400 years ago under the statute of monopolies, okay, then you've got to take another course of action, because then this doesn't apply to you. But if you are in one of these other municipalities, which is probably the case, which is claiming to be a corporate municipality, they have no rights under the law. In Australia, you can also claim, once again, HCA 11 2015. We went into this last Wednesday. Go and listen to last Wednesday's broadcast, okay? The corporations, you don't have to contract with them. And also there's another Australian precedent, which is, I forget the HCA number, but it's FEJO, that's FEJO, versus Northern Territory, okay? I think it's HCA 54 1996, but I'm not sure on that one, okay? But if you type in a search engine, FEJO versus Northern Territory NT, it'll come up with the precedent, and 11th paragraph down, there is a paragraph that says something like, that fee simple rights have long been recognized to be absolute under the, by the courts. And that when it says things like to such and such as his heirs and assigns forever, it has long been recognized. This indicates fee simple title, meaning freehold allodial title. And we all need to stand up right now for our freehold allodial title rights on our real estate, or we're going to lose it. Because these people are evil, they're corrupt, and they want your land. And they want my land. They're not going to get my land because they really put their foot in it, my local municipality. And now there's no way that they'll ever get it because they just really stuffed up big time, and they made a monumental error in their legal filings. It can't be undone, and it's done, and they've been informed of what has happened, and that I'm never going to pay property taxes again because I stood up for my rights. I'll never have to pay property taxes ever again. Now, that's enough information, I think, on the municipal side. Now we need to go over to the banking side, because that's the other group of monopoly men who are seeking to claim tremendous property rights on everybody's real estate. But once again, they're very, very easy to defeat, okay? The only way the bank will ever have any claim on your land is if they have a mortgage over your property, okay? And if, they can only obtain a mortgage if you agree to go into a mortgage with them. And unless it was for the purposes of initially buying the property, I would say that you'd be very, very foolish to ever give the bank any mortgage over your property unless it's for the specific and express purpose of you buying that property in the first place. Because, of course, these days property values are such that usually a mortgage is necessary. Now, my land here, I actually paid cash for it. So there has never been between me and a bank a contract concerning this land. Okay, but I reckon I've had mortgages with other pieces of real estate that I've owned in the past, and I've paid them off. Now, with the bank, once again, they're very, very easy to defeat, but you need to know what to do, and that is, if you stop paying the mortgage, whether willingly or unwillingly, you will usually get a period of months before the bank contacts you and basically says, you're behind in your mortgage and we want to foreclose. You need to notify that you are not just going to fold over, that you are going to contest the foreclosure, okay? You need to absolutely contest the foreclosure because there's a number of grounds that you could win on, but the one that is most likely to succeed, given what's been happening with the mortgages that have been going through the foreclosure process in the courts, you need to write to your bank and you need to notify them that they will be required to produce the note, the original mortgage documentation that you filled out at the time when you signed the mortgage, and that you will be contesting this foreclosure, and that you will there will be a period of discovery during which the bank will be required to produce the note. And I'll tell you what, Vincent, in 99.999% of cases, the bank will not be able to produce that original mortgage note. And that information is something that is really, really important. So important that the bank will, in all probability, be completely unable to produce the original mortgage documentation with relation to your loan, not a copy.
They will be able to produce a copy, but the original, you're probably right. We'll be right back. Guineith, we had a Get Prepared Expo in Lebanon, Missouri, the City of Lebanon Corporation. And I was so outraged, I demanded a meeting with the mayor, the police chief, the fire chief. Why? Because they sent the police in droves to our expo and frightened our guests. They sent the fire trucks with lights and sirens and horns. They frightened our guests. They parked the fire engines out front as if the building was on fire so people wouldn't come in. I mean, they pulled all kinds of stunts. So I demanded this meeting, and I showed up with Mrs. Finelli, and the only one there was the city manager. He decided that he would tell the mayor not to show up, the police chief not to show up, and the fire chief not to show up. And I said,
oh, boy.
Do you have a copy of the Missouri State Constitution? He said, well, in my car somewhere, but we don't go by that. So we have our own policies and procedures. And that's a quote. I have a recording of it. So I just looked up. I just went to a search engine and I typed in the following words. Let me get to it 1 second. I typed in, when was Lebanon, Missouri incorporated? And here's what I found out. Lebanon was founded in 1849. The community was named after Lebanon, Tennessee. It's actually spelled Lebanon, but here in Missouri we call it Lebanon.
Yep.
The former home of many of the first settlers. Lebanon also had many motels for travelers along Route 66 to stay in. That's a quote. Everything I just said was a quote. If you go down to another search engine result, you get Lebanon, Missouri -Wikipedia. And it says, history, Lebanon was founded in 1849. The community was named after Lebanon, Tennessee, the former home of many of the first settlers. Lebanon also had many motels for travelers along Route 66 to stay in. Incorporated 1877. Incorporated 1877. Now, you mentioned that there are corporations posing as governments. Well, this says incorporated Lebanon, the city of Lebanon is a corporation incorporated in 1877.
There you go. Corporation.
Yep.
There you go.
So in terms of the Constitution, well, they said, I mean, Chris Hurd is his name. He's the ringleader of the city of Lebanon, posing as government. He's the ringleader of that corporation, and he said, we have our own policies and procedures. That's what corporations have. Corporations have policies and procedures.
That's right. But corporations are subject to UCC 1/308. And that's just how it is, because that is the Universal Commercial Code, is it not? And if they're a corporation, then they're under commerce. And if they're under commerce, they're under the UCC. It's not hard to understand.
Well, here's the question. How do these parasites? How do these parasites? And I use that term, I believe, accurately. They are living off us. Okay, they are unwanted. They come and take from us. How is it that they can get away threatening us with guns? I mean, they have the guys in the costumes, right? They show up with the guns, and they will sell our property. They'll confiscate our property. They'll steal our property because they say we haven't paid them what they've demanded, meaning extortion. They call it taxes. How do they get away with this?
Because we let them get away with it. We should all be countersuing under UCC 1/308. Everybody who's getting this done to them needs to countersue under UCC 1/308.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, after they sent lights and sirens and disrupted our expo, I felt that they breached our contract.
Damages.
Okay? And what I decided to do was I was not going to pay them the balance since they damaged our expo. And they tried to come after me, and they backed right away. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us. She's live in Australia, living off-grid. So we're broadcasting with both ends of this broadcast off-grid. Guineith at one end in Australia. I'm at the other end in Missouri, United States. Off-grid. Guineith, did you want to continue this discussion, or do you want to move on to beating up Walmart?
We'll get on to Walmart. I've just got a few more things to say.
Sure.
Because it's really, really important for people to realize, why it's so important to ask for the original mortgage note. Okay? Because a lot of people, we've all been brainwashed or educated by their system, which is meant to defraud us, okay? And to everyone who says, well, isn't it okay just for the bank to produce a copy of the original note? And actually, under corporate law, the answer is no, because it's like this. A note is a security, okay? And it is exactly the same as if you go into your wallet, Vincent, and you pull out a $50 note or a $20 note or a $100 note, would it be okay for you to take a photocopy of that $100 note and to go down to the shops and to buy something that you needed with the photocopy of the $100 note? What do you think the store clerks or whatever would say to you?
Well, I know the answer to that. I know the answer to that. True story.
Yeah.
True story. So I had some students in Virginia.
Yep.
And we got this new copier, this new color copier at the school. And the students decided to try it out. And they were photocopying $20 Federal Reserve notes. And they went to the big city, Richmond, Virginia, and went to spend them. It didn't work. They were arrested.
A photocopy of a security is not a security. A photocopy of a negotiable instrument is not the negotiable instrument. And a mortgage is a negotiable instrument. Okay? It's a debt notice. It's a negotiable instrument, and a photocopy of a negotiable instrument is not negotiable. It's just not. You can't. It's not the debt note, and without that debt note, there is no mortgage. That is so important for people to realize this.
To prove what you're saying,
Glenn. It's the proof that there is actually a mortgage contract. And without that proof and evidence that there is a mortgage contract, without that securitized note, there is no mortgage. And what the banks have been doing is they have not been keeping their original mortgage documentation. They have been copying it into their databases and shredding the original shredding. Yes, you heard me right, shredding the original mortgage documents as quickly as they could. And the other thing is, on the rare occasion where the bank is actually able to produce that security, the original security, the original documentation, you need to check that it has actually been signed off on by a judge, and you need to check his registration details, okay, to make sure that he actually is a justice and not just a name that somebody has pulled out of a Wheaties box and, attached a rubber stamp to, because this is another trick that the banks have been pulling. They get even the copy of the security, which they keep, they maintain that that's good enough. It's not. Okay, just like it's not good enough to have a photocopy of a share certificate or a $20 note. It's not good enough. It's not the original document. Often they have not been, a mortgage is not a mortgage unless the contract is witnessed before a justice. Okay? If it has not been witnessed before a justice, then it's not a mortgage. Okay? And what they've been doing is something called robo-signing. This is the banks, instead of taking each mortgage before a justice, before a judge, to get it signed off on, okay, they have been getting anybody, to just scribble their name under the bottom and writing, I don't know, John Doe, Jim Jones, Sally Fields, whatever, underneath it. Okay? Just any name, doesn't matter, whatever. Name pulled out of a breakfast cereal box. Okay? That's not a mortgage. That's fraud on the face of it. And that is null and void. And if you discover that this is the structure of your mortgage is null and void, and you need to stop paying it at that point. As soon as you discover that, and you need to write to your bank. Once again, this is not legal advice. This is just education. You need to write to your bank. You need to inform them of what you've found. You need to inform them that you will not be paying the mortgage. And if they've got a dispute, you'll see them in court, basically. And they'll kick and scream and they'll fight and they'll hate it. And they'll send you all sorts of horrible letters. And it's all bluff. Okay? Because every single time recently that people have been doing a search on their mortgage documents, finding out that the guy that is supposed to be a judge is not a judge, that's supposed to have signed off on the documents, is basically somebody who doesn't even exist. Yeah, it's a John Doe name. Then people, when every single time that they've been digging their heels in, the banks have either settled out of court or they've drawn it out for years and years and years and years and years, hoping that you'll back down. And this is where it is so important to be able to know how to act in your own defense, because what they're looking to do is to wear you down with legal expenses. But when you're acting in your own defense, there are no legal expenses. And on the contrary, at the end of the process, you can charge the bank for your legal expenses and keep a record of all the hours that you've worked on this little project. And then at the end of it, then you can say, well, if I'd hired a lawyer for all of this, it would have cost me, $1,000 an hour? for 200 hours work, that's $200,000. Thank you very much, Mr. Banker. You know, and there's, you know, that might... Yep.
Can the process be started? Let's say someone says, you know, I think I'd like to do this, but I'd like a little more information first to see if, you know, to test the waters. How about one of us calling the bank? You know, if I don't have a mortgage note, we paid cash for our property because we did not want to be involved in any of these bank schemes.
Yep.
For a lot of reasons. But what if a person called the bank and said, I'd like to make an appointment with you to come in person, and I would like to see the original mortgage note documents that you have. When would be a good time for me to come in? I will make that time available. What would happen?
Well,
and say, I don't want a facsimile. I don't want a photocopy. I don't want an email PDF. I want to see the wet signature.
Yeah. Technically, they would have to show it to you, but once again, they would kick and scream and claim that they weren't able to for privacy reasons or whatever other reason they could think up. But you could then go to say, listen, I'm going to involve my attorneys in this matter, and we're going to go to discovery. And then you could sue them for, I don't know, think up something that you could sue them for, which I'm sure would not be difficult if you, if you suspect that there has been fraud or that, that there's been some breach of contract or whatever. That may, this is where it may be useful just to speak with a mortgage attorney, at least for the initial interview, which is often free, just to see if there's any legal technicality you can get them on to be able to go to discovery, or a chain of title dispute is another one, because that's another thing where the banks have been bundling mortgages and rehypothecating them. And it's not even really sure who owns the mortgage anymore, because they have sold the note to this person, and this person sold it to that person, and that person sold it to the other person, and nobody's quite sure who owns the mortgage note. And you may have to sue them to determine the chain of title.
Let me give you an example of what we're talking about when we come out back. I was there when this happened. I have two stories to tell that tie directly with what you're saying. Guineith Isaacs is with us. We're raising the bar. We'll be right back. So, story number one. Back in, it's 33 years ago that I was involved in this project, and it was one of what's called image processing. It's a new term in banking. That's when I worked at a bank. And my job was to build a system to take bank documents that related to customers' accounts that were signed by the customers and store them so we could retrieve them, because we had a physical filing system. It was like a wall of file folders. And it was tough to find the documents. So let me give you an example. So every time a customer wanted to dispute a charge on his or her credit card account, the bank required them to write a letter. And the letter would come in from the customer, and it would say, I'm disputing this charge on my credit card account because I didn't buy that thing. I didn't buy it. I don't know the merchant. I've never seen them before. That's not my charge. And they would sign it and date it. They would send that letter to the bank. And then there was an army of customer service representatives who would then do the research to figure out if this was a bona fide dispute or not. Well, sometimes those documents would get lost. They would be misfiled, one folder over, which means they could never be found again. And whenever that happened, the bank would lose the transaction amount of money. The customer would always win, and the bank would be on the hook because they had 30 days in which to respond. And if they couldn't find the document, they couldn't respond, and the bank was out that amount of money. So they told me, my boss told me, build a system to fix that. Well, the answer was image processing. And what that meant was we would have an index. There would be a numerical index that would be assigned to that document. The index would be cross-referenced to the customer's name, the merchant's name, the date, some other pertinent information. So you could go to a computer, type in the customer's name, and it would bring up the images related to that customer, and they wouldn't get lost anymore. Sounds like a great way to go. So what I'm saying is, you're absolutely right. I was there. I built one of those. I wasn't the only guy. There was a team of us. But we built this system. It was my responsibility to pull this off. And we did.
Yep.
So we shredded, as you said, the original documents, never to be found again. All right. That's one story. Second story. It relates to exactly what you said. And you're absolutely right. Second story. And these are just disputes. I mean, can you imagine the walls, the buildings full of the original mortgage documents? I can tell you that it'd be really hard to find them. It'd be really, really hard. I was there. I know it's hard to find them. Okay, next story. Yeah. So I was in the president's office talking to him about one of the systems I was building at the bank. This was a credit card bank. And in waltzes the marketing vice president. And he says, yeah. We're going to bundle and securitize the debt. Now, what he meant by that... Yeah, what he meant by that is we'll take, let's say, $10 million worth of customers' credit card charges. So the customers charge $10 million, a bunch of customers. Let's say 10,000 customers charge $10 million worth of debt. So what the bank did was they bundled that debt and sold it to another bank. That bank then cut it up and sold it to investors, or other banks who cut it up and sold it to investors. So what you had was, let's say, 10,000 customers worth of debt, and each customer didn't charge the same amount. Some might have charged $100, some might have charged $5,000. Not round numbers, with dollars and cents. It was all bundled up and sold. And it was cut up and sold and cut up and sold. So who owns what amount of what mortgage notes where the same thing happened, we don't know. It's probably darn near impossible to figure out who owns that debt, let alone get back that mortgage document that you're talking about. So there's two levels.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep. We'll be right back. So I've got a quick preparedness tip for you. I'm seeing here at the farm a number of people who are having dead battery issues for their vehicles, their light trucks and their passenger cars. And what's happening is the batteries are in a state of discharge, and then it gets cold and freezes overnight. Then it kills the batteries. Here's why. Now, a fully charged lead-acid battery won't freeze until approximately minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? That's a 100% fully charged battery. Now, one that is discharged can begin freezing at around 32 degrees, the temperature at which water freezes. When that happens, the lead plates inside the battery case will buckle because of the expanding, freezing electrolyte, and they will become physically damaged. Now, the way you can tell that is if you feel the sides, not the sides of the battery will bulge. The short sides, not the long side, but the short sides, you'll see they will bulge outward. okay, convex, if you will. And that is an indicator that the battery has frozen. So if you have one of those and you can't charge it, that's probably the case. So what's the simple advice? The simple advice is this. Look under your hood, and if you see corrosion on your battery, what you can do is take a garden hose, make sure you put it in an area where you're not going to cause problems for yourself when you rinse it off, and rinse off the battery terminals, okay? With a garden hose. Make sure you wear glasses, safety glasses, so you don't splash up and have these chemicals, the acid and the sulfates, land on your skin and so forth, and wash very carefully after you do this. But rinse off your battery. Okay, you don't need a lot of high pressure, but rinse off the terminals if you see corrosion, and that will, without turning a wrench, that will help make the connection better and make the charging system work better, and also help your car start better. Right? So really simple advice. And, another broadcast we'll get into checking the electrolyte and how to top off the electrolyte and what you should do. Should you add acid to your battery? The answer is no. No. Only distilled water. But we'll do another broadcast on that. But I wanted to share with you that you can prevent having to buy a battery. And right now, car batteries are going higher and higher and higher in price in the United States. They're out of control. If you go to AutoZone and you look up that battery for your car, you might find it's $139, $159 plus core, plus tax. You're looking at getting up toward $200 for a car battery. That used to be $19.95 when I was growing up. All right. So that's the story on car batteries. I'd like to Guineith, do you have a comment?
There is a spray that you can spray onto your terminals that will prevent the corrosion. I forget what it's called, but it's a yellow conductive spray. Okay, and you apply it to the terminals of your batteries, and it absolutely stops corrosion of your battery terminals in its tracks. And I can't remember what it's called, but I've actually owned it. I actually used it. I don't know if you've ever seen such a spray.
Well, yes, I have. Back in the 1970s, the very early 1970s, when I was a mechanic for Sears Roebuck and Company, we used a product called NOCO, as in no corrosion. And it was red, and it was dyed red, but it's probably a similar product to the yellow that you're talking about. But class, before you do that, you have to make sure you have good connection. So what you have to do is, if you've got corrosion,
you can't have any corrosion on your terminal when you use the spray. Get all the corrosion off first. Yeah.
Right. So the way I would do that is I would use a garden hose off the battery, and then take a mixture of baking soda and water, like a tablespoon of baking soda, and I would use a small brush and in a small cup, maybe a couple ounces of water and a tablespoon of baking soda. Brush it on the battery terminals. You'll see it neutralize the acid, and then you can. That's after you hose off, most of the corrosion. Then you can rinse it off again with that garden hose. Then take off the terminals one at a time, and clean them with sandpaper or a wire brush or whatever you have to make the connections bright and shiny. Then put it back together, and then you can spray that NOCO or the corrosion-preventing material back on the completed terminals. But make sure you can start the vehicle and that the connections are good before you spray anything on them. But yeah, that's a very good point. Guineith, would you mind if I talked about Walmart? I'm just going to burst if I don't.
Hang on, I've got to tell my dog off. Get off it!
Okay, so here's the story about Walmart. So I was working on a Mercedes, and it had been serviced last time at Walmart. What they do is they put a sealant on the oil filter housing, because the oil filter in this particular model 2000 Mercedes, an E320, has an oil filter cap that's the size of like a coffee cup, a large coffee cup.
Yep.
And attached to it is this plastic rod. and it's a replaceable oil filter element. So when you, what the last oil change guy did was he put a little sealing goo on there, like a hot melt glue, to indicate that he was the last guy to do it. You know, they've got it in orange and blue and all different colors. So their color was blue. And they also put this hot melt glue on the drain plug. So that says that they were the last company to do it. And we've seen this a lot. Well, I opened up the oil filter housing, unscrewed it, and I pulled out the oil filter, which should have had the oil filter cap, which should have had this oil filter cartridge or element attached to this plastic rod to direct the flow of oil, and it was disconnected. Actually, it was broken. So what the last guy did, I believe, was broke the oil filter plastic rod that directs the flow of oil, and was unable to put the oil filter back in, a new oil filter back in properly. So he took components off the oil filter, like the sealing rings, and just put an oil filter in there, put the two broken pieces in there, and said that's good enough. So for the 7,000 miles that this vehicle was being used, there was no filtration whatsoever of the oil. None.
Oh, man.
Just one more reason, class, why you cannot trust your vehicle. Now, this is a $43,000 list price vehicle when it was new. To some jerk to change your oil, you can't do it. You've got to do it yourself. Because I can tell you for sure that if you were doing this and you broke that piece, you'd say, uh-oh, I broke that piece. Would you just put the pieces back in the engine and say, that's okay, it's all right, that's all broken? Now, I believe what happened was this person was terrified that he or she broke the oil filter on a Mercedes and didn't want to tell the boss and just stuffed the parts back in the engine and closed it up and said, that's good.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, Vincent. And it's sort of like, it's all, I'm almost getting this picture of this children's cartoon, of where it's like, uh-oh, like Bugs Bunny or something, like Bugs Bunny's Auto Shop.
Yeah, or the Three Stooges.
To you?
Yeah.
The Three Stooges, yeah.
Yeah, Three Stooges Auto.
Right. And Pete, this is how people are operating as staff in the businesses that they work for. And it's universal. It's everywhere.
It absolutely is.
And there's always plausible deniability. I hate plausible deniability. Oh, it wasn't me. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, here's some more of the story. So here's this gal who has this, absolutely magnificent, I believe, let's say middle-aged gal, okay? So she's got this pristine, no-rust 2000 model car. It's immaculate. No accidents. I mean, I've been all over this car checking it out. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And so the oil change sticker in the upper left portion of the window, where the guy writes, here's your next oil change mileage. It says full synthetic oil. So here's this gal who believes that the big corporation Walmart is going to take care of her. And she buys their most expensive full synthetic motor oil because she wants to take care of her car. But it's doing no good because the oil filter system has been destroyed. So all those contaminants are circling around the engine. But she thought she did the right thing by paying extra, not a little bit extra, a lot extra for the best oil that they offer. That's one thing. So my curiosity was getting the better of me. So I decided to look at the tires. And they are Viva 3, V-I-V-A 3. That's the model, sold by Walmart. And if you go to the web, it'll tell you exclusively sold by Walmart. But I don't understand that because I found it at other tire companies as well. But Walmart's the big seller of Viva 3. Now, if you get a chance, class, here's your homework. Go to the tire department and find this Goodyear, good old American corporate name. It used to be a reputable name, not in my book, but not anymore. I've had Goodyear tires, but I won't buy them anymore, and I haven't had them for probably 25 years. But go and feel the sidewall and see how flexible the sidewall of that Goodyear Viva 3 tire is. And I looked at them, and I needed tires for my Mercedes before we became involved in tire distribution. Our son now has a tire shop. And that's because I said, hey, we can't trust anybody to service our tires. We have to do it. So anyway, if you go to look at the tires, this Viva 3, you'll find out that if you read the outside of the tire, it says plies. It'll tell you how many plies the tread is. And it'll say sidewall. 1 ply. One. The only thing less than 1 ply is no plies. That would be a party balloon. No plies. These things fail like crazy. So we took a small detour to talk about tires. And I've been bashing Goodyear's Viva 3, V-I-V-A, number 3, as sold by Walmart. And I looked at the sidewalls in the store. I couldn't believe it, how flimsy they are. You'll see the same thing. So, class, that's your homework. Go to, next time you're in the Chinese factory outlet, go to the tire, battery, and lubrication department, and you'll see the rack of tires. Just feel the sidewall. You won't believe it. Compare it to, the other brands that they have. And what I found out was when I read the sidewall, it's 1 ply of polyester for the sidewall. Now, the tread has a couple plies of steel, but 1 ply is unacceptable to me. And we have a friend who happened to buy them several months ago, and she keeps getting flats. She drives on the gravel roads, and they just puncture right through and tear up the tires. Another neighbor bought 4 of them at Walmart and had a sidewall blowout. And others are having all kinds of failures with this particular tire. Don't believe me? Just go to look up reviews, opinions. Goodyear Viva 3, the number 3, and see what they say. You won't believe. And then you'll see some, plenty of reviews that say these are great. But it's a 50,000-mile tire, and people say that they're lasting 20,000, 25,000 miles, if that. But they're getting flats like crazy. Tires vehicles that they've driven before with other tires that never got flats, they got plenty of flats, and that's exactly what we're seeing here in our neck of the woods. Plenty of flats. So what do? You buy tires with more plies, and you have to actually become educated in tires, and I need to do a broadcast on how to buy tires. One last thing about tires. So I took the front wheels off this Mercedes. I put them on our balancer, and it said they were out of balance dynamically by a half an ounce on one side and a half an ounce on the other side. And I thought, can't these guys do anything right? So then I set our balancer to static balancing, and they balanced perfectly. They were perfect, right from Walmart. Now, what does that mean? Well, a static balance is if you put the tire and wheel assembly horizontal, okay, and you found the exact center point of that wheel, it would balance perfectly north, south, east, and west. But that's not what happens with a tire and wheel. You actually turn it 90 degrees and rotate it. So now you have a spinning force, which needs not to be balanced horizontally. It needs to be balanced vertically. And because that's how your car uses its tires and wheels as they rotate down the road. Well, there's an inside out of balance and an outside out of balance. So the inner part of the wheel needs to be balanced, and so does the outer part of the wheel. So you need weights on both sides. Well, what Walmart did, or somebody there did, was set it for static balancing, which requires 1 weight instead of 2 weights or 3 weights. Okay? So they only balance one side of the wheel. So it's never going to be balanced right. Not for driving it.
Which means you're going to wear your tires out more quickly.
Right. That's exactly right. So here we have Walmart taking more shortcuts Okay. Now, did the guy say, I can do more tires faster if I only put one weight on them, so I'll just hit the button that says static balance instead of hitting the button right next to it that says dynamic balance? Now, we've got a used Walmart or Sam's Club Snap-on brand tire balancer. It's really good. I mean, it's the best in my opinion there is. And I use that equipment to check their work. And I know that they only balanced it statically and not dynamically. Why? Because there's only one weight on the tire. But you can see the evidence of the previous weights, the guy or gal who balanced them before that, and he used the right locations because you can see the residue of the sticky goo for the stick-on weights rather than the bang-on weights. What I'm saying is, class, there's a lot of things that you have to learn. And just because that balancer comes up and says 0, 0, 0 on the left side and 0, 0 on the right side doesn't mean the balancer was set properly for dynamic balancing. And also, there's one other thing. You can tell the balancer to round off. You can say, well, if it's within a quarter of an ounce, that's good enough, and tell me 0, 0, 0, 0, even though it's not really balanced. So the customer will say, hey, that's perfect. It reads it's perfectly balanced when it's not. Gwyneth, any 10-second comments?
Well, my granddad used to be the Willie's night dealer, and they only had one-ply tyres, and they used to have to carry 3 spares.
There you go.